here we are back here with part two. So we left and we're talking about manufacturing hard. We're talking about doing the things, principles versus, what emotional thoughts and things like that. So we just during the break, we talked about all sorts of things of, the topic was also quiet. That was probably one of the many things that we talked about the longest. We talked about that it is important to have that quiet time, that we're able to, I guess, think a little bit more and do some of these mental dumps of the thoughts and the things that we need to, maybe that have been checked off that we haven't mentally, deleted out of there. What's some things that I guess that you prepare? So you do the morning thing. What have you changed? You've probably had to change the evening before for that morning routine. Yeah. Well, how do you prepare for some of these things?
Well, I've tried to keep obviously, this similar routine just before going to sleep for me, and so it's been. Obviously, I'm now more tired earlier. But I think being able to come home and be, and I was always so busy before, so worried before about what I need to do for the next day in the evening, to where now, sometimes, emergencies come up. But I mean, for the most part, I know now I have this time in the morning as well, where I can get things done. And so I think that's definitely changed the routine in the evening as well, and just making sure I'm actually, if you don't get into bed before 10 o'clock, then you definitely feel the difference the next morning.
Do you feel that this is something that you're going to encourage coaches and players, or is this going to be just a personal thing that you're going to be doing?
That's just a personal thing for me right now. I mean, I think I would definitely, encourage people to kind of find that time for you, for you. I think that we were talking about, hunting when you were out. I think there's something to be said. I was not raised in the hunting culture, right? So I come up here and I was telling him, I didn't really get it. I thought it was interesting. I want to learn,
right? But
I didn't really get it until Chris Thompson took me. We went up to Island Park. We weren't actually hunting because the season was over. But he's like, "We're just gonna go stalk." And I'm like, "Okay." What are you talking about? And Bronx was little. I mean, he was, I think, in 10, 12 at that time, and Bronx was with us. So as I see this, this young kid, and I'm like, so we go out and we just start, walking, and then it's like, okay, sit for like 30 minutes. I'm like, and then again and again. So we're out there for a few hours, probably 3-4 hours, and after that point, I was like, I'm sold.
Yeah.
Like, this like, you don't even need to go out and hunt. Just go stalk.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because like this, talk about teaching. If you're a father, what a great lesson, unintentionally, that you're teaching your child, your son, right? Being out there and be able to sit still and be quiet with his own thoughts.
And then delayed gratification that comes from it.
That's right. And think about it, you may not get the kill. You may not get anything that time out or whatever. Or you're just, you're just scouting it out. So I think like those lessons, however they come, I think we do need to plan them in more, and we need to be more intentional, because I think they are missing. And I think I think those are the things that we need more of that sense of being bored sometimes. Because I read, you read so much, there's so much information. I was talking about, you guys do so many of these podcasts and have probably so much good information. Well, at some point, it's like paralysis by analysis, right? Like, what do I... It's too much,
right?
Yeah. And so we all said, okay, I'm not going to read. I'm just going to sit here. I'm going to enjoy. That's why I enjoy the summers here. I mean, my favorite time of year is summer and early fall, and being able to sit outside and enjoy the weather. It's not too hot, and I have a big deck I built on my house. So it was like I'm going to build a deck when I was building our house, and I love being out there in the summer.
Right.
I'll have a book oftentimes, but it is a great time to be able to just like do nothing and just enjoy it.
That's the analysis by paralysis. I heard this a long time ago, and it's like you have so much education and not enough execution.
Yeah, that's right.
And it reminds me of that. I mean, it's true. And we love to be educated, and sometimes the education feels like like we're doing something.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
When really it's the execution of what it's doing.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, on our side, we always see the agents, right, as far as real estate goes. You see, and you probably see it in every business and everything. They go to conferences or go to something, and they want to change their whole, everything they're doing based on what they saw there. And they do it every few months. And there's never any traction. And
Trust me, I'm in education, and it happens all the time. You know, you get someone, some assistant principal or principal goes to some conference, and all of a sudden it's like, we're changing everything. It's like, hey, can we just do something like for more than a year?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I also feel like it's a little bit of the, we like real estate agents, we want to go to these conferences and things because then it feels like we're doing the easy work.
Yeah.
And we can act like we're being productive, but really it doesn't change your bottom line and it doesn't make you any money.
That's right.
Costs you money.
Yeah, and nowhere on your P&L are you like, oh man, I made this much money for going to this conference.
Right. Yeah.
And so we can, I'm sure that it's the same way on the football field with the youth training and all of the things that are coming along that everybody's getting consumed with. That's like, I got to do this and this and this and this. When it's like, if you just stick to these principles and these things, then that's all you need to do to be successful.
I wouldn't say that's all you need to do, but I mean, like we get so wrapped up in the latest guru.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Think about right now with all these private trainers out there in sports.
Oh yeah.
Like it was epidemic in Southern California before I left. And it's frustrating for a coach sometimes to, think that, people are going to pay for something and they value that more than an established reputation of a high school coach.
So my buddy is a high school basketball coach. And I said, do you realize everybody's making a lot of money except for you? and you put in just as much time, if not more.
Probably more
but
time.
You get paid $0, like really compared. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, I paid this trainer, this trainer, and I got 5 kids. And then they want them to scatter around. And it's like.
Well, I think the one thing we have to remember, and I think is that goes back to this whole idea of, you think you're doing something.
Right.
And it's great. I'm glad kids are, and want to go get better, and we encourage it. But at the same time, just doing something to do something is not good either. And you have to also know that those trainers are making money.
Right.
And so the results, right, that they might communicate to you affect you coming back.
Right.
So let's just, right? Whereas the high school coach is like, this is who you are. I'm not getting paid any more or less.
You're 40 times not any faster.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It just seeing this evolve over the years, it's just, sometimes we look at ourselves like going, what are we doing? But hey, it gives us the gratification we're having an impact. I still believe that, we can make an impact beyond the game.
Right.
And so it still makes it worth it. If I don't feel that way, then I'll get out of the business. It's like, I still feel like we're going to make an impact. And as long as the kids, are still coachable, and we have great families in our community and are supportive of what we're doing and all the stuff we're talking about. If I ever felt, and I did feel this a little bit in Southern California, where I don't know if people were quite bought into it. It was a little too much about the fluff and the show, and I felt like the message was falling on deaf ears. Right?
Yeah.
It's like the parable of the sower. Right? At some point, you have to realize you're wasting your time.
Why do you think that is? Is it like just a more population? Is it more?
No, I just think the mentality. I think there's a different mentality in different parts of the country. I think that being in the LDS community here is a positive thing in terms of the values you're trying to teach. I think they match, what we're teaching in our program, which are Christian values.
Right.
When you think about it.
Right.
And not to say that those, like in Southern California, was actually a pretty conservative Christian area, but I just think the materialism that's taking over our society in all places, right? The having to, it's like keeping up with the Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's just having more of an impact within families. And so it becomes about what things look like and the perceptions rather than what's the substance. And so you could talk about it with, and say it, but it's like, well, what are you actually doing? And again, we have to look at ourselves in that way too as a program. We can talk about it, but what are we actually doing? But I think within families too, that's a real struggle, and it's not easy. I understand that the challenges that everybody, as parents face. You're trying to raise trying to raise children right now in this environment, right, is one of the, I think, most difficult things that I think parents have had to face in a long time.
So,
Absolutely.
So my dad, successful guy, was extremely frugal. And so this is going to kind of be along what you said, and we'll pull it around, but it is interesting of how things change and evolve, because like me, definitely a consumer, right? And he's like, man, why do you buy so much random stuff? And I was like, I don't know. And then I get thinking, like, you have social media, you have all these things that are like putting in front of you. And I was having a conversation with my wife, and I was like, like when we were kids, people didn't get new vehicles. The guy who got the new vehicle was a guy that sold his business or was high up in some company, but you didn't get new vehicles. Now everyone, it's not foreign thing for like, I bet 4 out of 5 people get a brand new truck within the last 5 years.
I look at these lots. It's like, do they sell all these trucks?
Yeah. And it's crazy, right? So like, crazy, to me, I remember that. I remember being like, that farmer or that guy is doing really well. Yeah. He just bought a brand new pickup.
Yeah.
And now that and so the consumerism, and we're wondering why we can't afford the things that we can't afford. Yeah. It's because we're spread out so thin on things that like our parents, and they're like, how did, my dad or my grandma afford this? And it's like, well, they didn't buy $8 coffees. In my end, they didn't go and hit the 3 for $9 on Monsters every single morning.
That's right.
And I had 2 pair of jeans and about 5 shirts, and that's it.
That's
right?
right.
And like 2 pair of shoes. I had Sunday shoes and work shoes. That's it. And now it's like,
and there's no, I mean, the reality is there's no going back, obviously, but that's not the point. I mean, to have a sense of, again, going back to honoring the past, right? To say, well, maybe they knew more than we think.
But I think that's it.
Right?
I think that's it, is because when you go back, and it's like, you can't reverse it.
No.
But you can't help but think they didn't buy this stuff because it was liabilities. They invested it. They invested in their future. They did different things, and they ended up all okay because of that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is like, they knew more and they didn't know as much, I guess, or care as much on certain things.
Yeah. I think there was not the opportunity, because with social media now, everybody sees.
True.
Yeah.
There's nothing to compare yourself to besides your neighbor.
Yeah, exactly. Your neighbor, and your neighbor's the same as you.
Yeah,
right? Exactly. Based on where you lived, obviously, right?
Of course.
So a lot of it's also on the perception and caring what other people think of us, right? Mm-hmm. So is that something that, with young athletes, I know that there's, that they all want the perception to be a certain way.
Yeah.
And I know, like you're talking about the man in the arena, me growing up, I was intimidated as hell to fail. I didn't want my peers to look or laugh, or, you know what I mean? Or I didn't want any egg on my face ever. And so how do you, I guess, get that sort of thing? Like, it's okay to stand out for what you believe in that maybe is like the opposite of the norm, or it's okay to fail. You as a coach, how do you welcome that?
That was a principle, I think, of John Wooden, is we don't compare ourselves to each other or the competition. We don't care. Years ago when, can't remember, it was Aaron who was the head coach at San Juan Hills at the time, and probably the first time we really used it was this idea of like, hey, it's us against us. This week, and I've used it occasionally over the years. Like, it has nothing to do with our opponent. It has to do with where we're at. Where are we growing? What do we need to learn? And so, I'll say, hey, this week is Rigby versus Rigby. Who's going to win?
Yeah.
Right. I don't care what the color of the uniform, the mascot. I don't care who it is, and that's daily too. It's like, we don't compare ourselves. We try and encourage them. Think comparison is a thief of all joy, right? Isn't that the quote?
Absolutely.
Boy, that's truth.
Yeah.
And because when you're constantly comparing to others, you rob the joy of participating and experiencing, right, the team environment. You know, whether it's in a business environment and, you know, your real estate, you're all, I mean, there's good to have a healthy competition, but it's like, how am I doing?
Right.
How did I do my best? Did I give my best effort yesterday? Not just because they did or didn't. And so, you know, whether it's in the weight room or on the field, you know, it's like we're trying to make sure we are competing with ourselves every day. And that's really what John Wooden's definition of success was. Having the self-satisfaction, I don't remember the whole quote, of knowing that you did your best. That's it.
Yeah. Right.
That's success. And I don't know if we might still say it. I don't know if we really believe it anymore.
I like that because sometimes we achieve and we do well, but it's like you're outside. There's a thing that we hear in real estate, and I'm sure it's been before that, but it's like, don't compare your insides to other people's outsides. And so you do something really well and you look over and you're like, well, Jason's doing more. It appears like he's doing more. But if you're always comparing, then you're never going to feel that self-accomplishment. So it's like, well, I reached this PR on this lift, or I've done this in this practice, or I've hit this position, and or I'm getting more playing time than I used to. And if you can focus on those, then that's what you can control and try to just get a little bit more every single time.
Comparison's only going to slow the progress of you becoming who you want to become, right? It's just going to slow that down. Just because you looking at others isn't going to, what they do doesn't affect you.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, but like you said, it's a process. It's who you become. And if they're improving as well, competition and things like that may be better.
Yeah.
But that doesn't, it's just going to slow you down from doing what you're going to do. The time you spend doing that, you should be spending doing those little things every day.
And that's why the social media is, you know, such a problem.
Yeah.
Because that is now, like, they're seeing it all day, hours at a time.
Yeah.
It's all comparison.
And you're not comparing yourself to 5 kids, you're comparing yourself to 5,000 kids.
Like you wonder why we're anxious in our society right now. It's like, if you got to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, that's not easy.
No.
And so that's why it's like, okay, it's there. We understand it's not going back. But we still have a responsibility as the adults around the place to guide our young people in the right direction. And to say we don't have time because I'm a football coach, well, I coach football. Well, yeah, great. But if our kids just play football and graduate at the end of the day, I didn't do my job. And I didn't always believe that or do that. I might have, you know, kind of understood it. But at the end of the game, it was just about playing football and coaching football, and it was fun, and there's a strategy, and we all love the game. I get it. But now, at this stage in my career, and as I look back, I'm like, man, you know, if kids leave our program and their only experience with me was just learning, you know, how to line up in a certain formation and a certain defense, like who really? Like my wife's not a sports person.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think what I've really taken from her is like, you know, over the years, it's like, it's just a game. You put so much time in. It's just a game. And she does like some sports, but I mean, she's speaking the truth. Like, it is just a game. Yeah. But if we make it bigger than that in terms of how we're teaching the game, then it becomes meaningful. And I think that's what we're trying to do better now than we've ever done before.
Where does my favorite word, fun, come in? So how do you, because I've actually never heard anyone complain, which blows me away. It was Cannon Oswald. Ollie was coming into being a freshman, and Cannon's like, and it was March, and he's like, oh, I friggin' love this. This is amazing, and I can't wait. And I was like, what the? And he's a big dude, right? And he's exerting himself every single day. And I was like, I don't understand. Like, and it took me forever. And how do you keep it fun? How do you make it fun? What is fun about it when it is so much hard work and discipline? Yeah. Like, when you think of hard work and discipline, there's not a lot of things in my life that I think is like fun, right?
That's a good point.
So how do you make that happen?
That's, I think.
And maybe it's not fun. Maybe it's
it the result?
Here's what I would say. Here's what I would say. And maybe this will go in and have a direction it goes. We can't take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah.
If I become my position, I'm the head coach.
Yeah.
I take myself too seriously, right? Yeah. If I can realize, okay, I am the head coach.
Yeah.
But I can also, have a joke and talk about other things with the kids. And, hey, what's going on? Are you doing okay? And, I think we have to take those opportunities as well. It's not all serious. And like I said, it's a game.
Yeah.
So let's just keep it in perspective. There's a time to be serious. And that's obviously, especially as you get closer to the season.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of time we have.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday's the last walkthrough, and you're playing on Friday night. So, I mean, you've got to be pretty efficient. And but in those moments, there's those isolated moments that we all have. And that's why I still enjoy coaching a position. Like, I coach the corners, and I've had coaches help me, like Zabe helped me this last year and did a great job. But I still like that connection of being with the kids every day. Because if I was just like the CEO, right, I don't know if I'd have as many of those moments, right, where the kids can still get to know me and have a personality, right? And I think we all need to be able to do that as leaders. Is still, I think that goes back to stepping into the forest and getting out amongst the, above the trees. But I think we take ourselves too seriously sometimes.
That's pretty awesome, because I've also heard that too. I've also heard that it's a lot of fun. That I have a kid that comes home and he'll tell me funny things that's happened. Or seriously things that ended up being funny. Or, different things. And sometimes it's maybe a kid that got yelled at and maybe he thinks that's funny unless it's him that gets yelled at. But then he'll still kind of, because it isn't too serious and he knows the intention. He's never like, man, he's riding my can, or he's never like, I had the worst practice ever. He's like, oof, I messed up once, and I don't think I want to do that again. And he but you can laugh at it because in the end, he knows he's loved. He knows that he's taken care of, and
that's right. And so if you've developed the relationships, and that's one of the things I told myself when because I said I didn't want to be a head coach, right? I didn't want to be a head coach before I took this job. After the first, I talked about it last time, the failure.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that, and maybe that was a cop out. Maybe that was an escape. And when I did get the opportunity, and I said, well, if I'm going to do this right, then it has to be about relationships, not just results. And so I think balancing that and building relationships and getting the players to know you're a human being too. And it gets hard sometimes because obviously, the longer I'm at a place and we've had success, sometimes people look to you in a certain way, and I'm like, hey, I'm just a normal guy. And I'm like everybody else. And, and oftentimes, I don't know if you remember when you're younger, sometimes you see your teachers in the supermarket and you're like, oh my gosh, there's my teacher, right? And it's like, because we think those people that you only see for those few hour a day are like superhuman,
right?
And it's funny when you see kids like that. And my wife tells me some stories sometimes of seeing kids, and it's like they see you out of the environment that they're used to seeing you in, and it's like it's weird, right? But no, we're human beings too, just so you know. And so I think trying to develop that sense of relationship with them, and also keeping that level of like respect. But they have to know at the end of the day that you care about them. And I know it's another cliche, but it's a cliche because it's the truth. And if they do, then you got to use those moments though. Those moments come up, and sometimes we do need. I try and laugh at myself as, sometimes all the time I'm making fun of myself in front of the team. They know my quirks, and I can't take myself too seriously, and I think that lightens the mood. And I think it's also a skill for a leader.
Keep from burnout too.
If you're so serious and focused all the time, you're not going to make it. So I think you have to be able to lighten the mood and know when to do that and have some humor. Edwin Friedman, that was the author. In that book, I said, A Failure of Nerve. He talks about that, about having that skill of being able to, when you're in a really tense, anxious situation in a work environment, or in a team environment, sometimes it needs a laugh. When we're too serious, it just perpetuates the negativity.
Right.
And so sometimes breaking the mood, it's like that's a skill. Right. And that's an art to be able to know when to do that and have that sense of, again, that goes back to a leader being the non-anxious presence, him or herself.
Yeah.
That's true. How do you work on that? Like you mentioned that a couple times now, and being that we see that in transactions as well. We talked about a lot of agents. Things happen obviously in a transaction. Obviously, they're dealing with a big purchase in their life, and sometimes it's they're going through it. They're having all these emotions. Things maybe bad happen in the transaction that we can't control,
right?
And we find that there's some agents that add fuel to the fire, and it just kind of blows up and gets even bigger than it should be. And there's other agents that stay pretty even keel.
Yeah.
So in your environment, that's probably happening daily.
Oh, yeah.
And so how do you keep that even keel as you go through and not let things get to you and get like fired up in you?
Yeah. So we talked about self-awareness. I think another aspect that Friedman discussed that I really learned a lot from was self-regulation. That goes back to the regulating of your own, right, emotions.
Yeah.
Well, whether we like it or not, I mean, leadership is an emotional process.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a strategy technique process. You could be the best leader and have the best techniques in the world. You come into a culture, and you know when it's. It's hard to describe. Everybody has what is a culture? Well, you know when it's negative. You can feel it.
Oh,
so you step into that environment as a leader,
or when you try to change it,
or when you try and change it, right? Or say a NFL coach gets hired, right? Yeah. New environment, new mentality, new mindset. Well, what do you do?
Yeah,
that's not easy. So I think that's your self-regulation is really important, because if you're in an emotional system, because it's a system, that's where systems thinking goes into leadership. You're dealing with an emotional system. So if you think you're gonna solve the problems of the world with a strategy or technique, you're kidding yourself.
I like that.
Right? So you have to be able to understand people are coming from a place of pain themselves.
Yeah.
In their previous work environment, previous job, within their own families. And this is why our jobs are not just an isolated, right, place where we just come and forget the world. So he talks about family dynamics influencing, right, the job environment, right, the work environment, the team environment. Our kids go home and they go home to various situations and circumstances. Yeah. You don't think that's going to affect them when they come back to us?
Well, you've done a good job of when you chat like with parents, that it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
A kid comes home, he's happy, sad, excited, like the support that they get at home. Yeah. You see it here. The number one factor, whether or not a real estate agent's going to be good, is their spouse. Mm. If they come home and
that's right,
that is a little tension, whatever, it's just going to wear them down to nothing. Correct. And so it has to be the same with the kid. Yeah. Of man, I'm really trying for this position, and it's like, well, it's not fair because of blah 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 blah, and that you build on that, or
you could be the victim, right? So there's two options, and that's really a huge part. You can encourage the victim mentality as a parent, or you could say, "You'll be okay, son."
Yeah.
Right?
Either way,
just keep working.
Yeah.
They'll recognize it. And I try and communicate to both our parents and our players of, we're constantly evaluating. Yeah. Everything is looked at, everything you do. But we make mistakes too. And that's why I've always kept an open door. You can contact me, you can come by. I don't have a problem talking to you about what's going on with your son. I want to make sure that they're treated in a healthy way as well. But at the end of the day, you also have to trust, right, what we're trying to do. And sometimes that doesn't always make sense to a teenager. So I'm hoping you as the adult can help them through that process.
Right.
And that's it's not always easy to see your child suffering, right?
Yeah.
Through something they really want.
Yeah.
But sometimes parents are almost more emotional than the kids are.
Sometimes,
in some cases, right? Yeah. They want it more than the kid does.
I think we're seeing that more in this day and age of parents living through their children.
Yeah.
Right. So he also talks about in that book that I learned there's a thing called emotional triangles. So he talks about don't get triangled in, right? Because when you get triangled in, think about the triangle. You've got you, the coach, the kid, and the parent. There's the triangle, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you don't want to get boxed in that emotional trap. He said, she said, right? Because I don't know what the kid's going home and tell their parents.
Right.
So, if I sense, and I didn't always, coaches don't want to have to deal with this, or leaders in general don't want to have to deal with this. But if I sense there might be a miscommunication or a problem, rather than just hoping for the best, which often we do, because we don't want to, who wants to actually approach negativity or conflict, right?
Or has time.
Yeah, it's like, exactly. But, if you have to say, hey, why don't we all just sit down? So when I meet with our parents about something that's coming up like that, it's always, I need your son there.
So, and when you talk about kids not knowing going home, schoolwork is an awesome time in my house, right? And you got your app or whatever that pulls up, and we can see grades.
Yeah.
And then you get a million excuses.
Exactly.
And it's I'm like, and going back to that, it's just skirting around accountability.
That's right.
And so how do you, I guess, how do you try to prevent that at the beginning with kids? And is it just like you just hit the standards and the principles? How do you get it so it doesn't go that far? So it's like, well, I didn't know this or this or this or this.
I think that puts more responsibility on the coach. Being an AD, which was a great experience for me, which I'd never want to do again, really. What it did teach me is how important the structure and the communication and is with families and the parents. Because where I saw most of the problems when I had to intervene, and get involved with the situation with parents and a coach, it was often because of that not knowing, miscommunication, wasn't clear, there was no clarity. And so that does put more responsibility on us as coaches on the front end,
right?
As leaders on the front end, to say, hey, these are the standards, this is what we expect, here are the expectations. And what I've gone away from too rigid as well.
Yeah.
It's like just updating the policy manual each year isn't the answer either, right? So, hey guys, read the policies. Like, okay. Right, that's not the answer either. But I mean, you got to at least have something in place that covers, I think that's a general for us, like general conduct, how we operate, how we carry ourselves, what our expectations are in terms of your commitment, and as long as those things are communicated, I think in advance, then it's a lot easier. It alleviates most of them, and then when those conversations come up, then it's like, well, this is what we expected, and this is what your son's not doing. And he might have told you this, but this is what's really happening. And so that's why I think, staying out of the triangle, the emotional triangle, is actually dealing with it face to face, head on. I think, the emails are so easy these days, and I would encourage coaches to stay away from, emailing parents about those type of things.
Yeah.
Even though it takes more time out of your day, and it's. You have to deal with conflict head on. I would say, hey, just pick up the phone, right? Hey, I'd love to be able to sit down with you guys, and this is some things that are going on, and deal with it head on. And my experience, more often than not, that's way more productive, because what happens with the emails is there's always a response back. It's like, who's going to win the email argument, right? So I've tried to stay away from that. And if we did have, like I said, I've been very fortunate at Rigby. It doesn't come up that often. When you've established a certain standard of how you operate, people know what they're getting into.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What's pretty awesome, and we've talked about a lot of this stuff before, and but building something with such a strong culture, and people know, then it's easier to regulate it, and it's easier to see where the temperature is on everything, and so they know. If they come in below that, they're going to have to raise it. If they come in above that, then, they're going to have to it's maybe a little too much, or it's, I think
you're going to lose some people in your business, right? You're going to in your organization, your team.
Yeah, but that's okay.
Yeah. I think
you'll keep the best ones and the ones that want to be there.
That's the reality. Yeah. At some point you have to draw a line. And I think those people have to realize, if I want to be a part, and that's why going back to the ideas of do I want to be part of something great? Do I want to be part of something bigger than myself? Do I want to be part of a brotherhood? Do I want to be if I want to be part of that, then the talent and the ability and the going out and playing football games takes care of itself.
Right.
Because we focus on what matters most first, and everything else falls into place. But when it's in the first part of my career, when it was just about the practice and the playing and the offense and the defense. And then it's like, oh, I got to deal with that. Oh, that came up. Oh, it's like, right?
Right.
It's backwards.
Yeah.
That took me a long time to figure out.
Yeah. I think it's that face-to-face interaction is so important because they can see where you're coming from.
That's correct.
They know that it's coming from a good place. You only want the best for this kid.
Yeah.
And in an email, you don't. In an email, it comes across as an accusation, and so they feel like they have to defend it and then dig their heels in. Whereas face to face, and they feel that, hey, we just want what's best for your kid and the team and our future growth.
That's right.
Not just for football, but for moving forward. And they feel that, and obviously can feel that from you.
Yeah.
And that's why that works for you.
And I like that you said that because not a lot of people can take the emotion out of text, whether it's a text or
hard.
an email.
That's right.
And so they read it.
They read into what they want.
Overanalyze it.
Yep.
Read what they want. And then how can I send this back so then he thinks the way that I want him to think?
Yeah.
And then, and then you're like, wow, it's a little over the top of even what was going on. So
I think what it comes down to as well, and I think maybe it goes back to the authenticity of you building that relationship. They know what you're about. No matter what you might think, I'm not out to get your kid, right? Our coaches, right? We're not out to get your kid. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. But what I do tell our players from the very beginning is we're about truth. Like, we're not going to sugarcoat it. We're not going to lie. Like, this is the truth, and we're going to deal with the truth.
Right.
And if that has certain consequences, so be it. But I'd rather deal with the truth and not tap dance around things. And obviously in a caring way with dignity, right? And grace. And you got to learn that over the years in a leadership position. But, our program is based on truth.
Yeah.
So
and having that self-control not to get down into the weeds with them.
That's correct. Yep, that's right.
So a couple of closing questions I have, Jason, and if you have some as well. Coach, how would you teach a kid like to try and not to be scared of failure?
You mean to give effort?
Yeah. And I shouldn't say kid. I think anybody listening to this, because real estate agents we talk to and we try to encourage new things and there's some things that are maybe outside of comfort zones. How do you encourage, I guess, to step out of comfort zones and not be so scared of the outcome one way or another?
I think it's someone can have that, but then be in the wrong organization.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's a combination of the two. I think if this goes back to the leadership, like, you're a business owner, look at ourselves in the mirror to say, what type of environment am I creating to encourage that type of behavior? So if I expect my players to dare greatly, then I can't be so obsessed with the result. Yeah. I have to be able to allow the failure, and we have to be able to say we're going to take risks. Like, hey, we're going to play the best teams around.
Yeah.
Period. It is what it is. If you play at Rigby, you're right. You're going to be exposed to the best football teams in the area, in Utah and wherever. We're going to try and play teams all over the West, and we want to expose them to those opportunities. Does it mean that we're going to lose some football games? Possibly. Does it mean that sometimes we're going to get in over our head? Possibly.
Most likely, right?
We did that in 2018 when we went up to Eastside Catholic. That was a rough experience, but guess what? We learned a lot from that, and we took it the right way, and we learned and grew from it. And I think that, one of the principles in the book we used with our freshmen, Chop Wood, Carry Water, is nothing is a test, but only an opportunity to learn and grow. And so but I have to live that. And so if I'm creating that environment, then we have to still hold a standard, but at the same time, we have to allow our kids to make those mistakes. And that's why the practice leading up to things, right? And this whole off-season process is so important, because if you just get to game week, you can't keep making the same mistakes. But right now, in this early part of the, as we start up in April and start teaching and doing things, like, we can't be so focused on, you got to get it done right now. And you also, I tell our players, when you're a younger player in our program, do it exactly as we tell you. Don't ad-lib. Don't get creative. Just do it exactly as we tell you. By the time you're a senior, now I don't want you to be a robot.
Right.
Right? You've gotten more comfortable. You know what we understand. Yeah. You know how this fits into the big picture, whether it's a skill or a scheme. And you got to make decisions on the fly out in the field against really good competition, right? In an instant, I need you to use your instincts, right, and dare greatly and be great. And I think if we encourage that in our team, in our organization, then that allows them to. On an individual basis, I think it does go back to who we're becoming.
Right.
And so I think reading, there's a reason why I was just listening to Plutarch's, there was a podcast I was listening on the way in, and they were talking about Plutarch's, Plutarch's Lives, where Plutarch was an old historian that profiled, he compared someone from the Greek and the Roman time to each other. And like, for example, Caesar, Julius Caesar, and maybe a Greek that and he kind of profiled their life. And it's not exact history. They know that. But he tells the story of their life. And then he kind of goes into kind of like, what can we learn from, what did they do? How they screw this up, right? What did they do well? Right? And so what I like about that, and I've only read a couple parts of them, but I think using those stories for ourselves to say like, yeah, people have done this before, right? So, I mean, we were talking about stories before you came back as well. It's like, we need to become better storytellers. I mean, everybody can take 3 great principles of what we talked about today. Great. But I feel like if we told a good story, it would resonate better.
Right.
And so like, as we teach, like, for example, our tradition over the 9 years I've been there in our program, I don't want to lose the stories of some of these, players that have come through that had great stories of what they accomplished and what they overcame. And so like, as we are teaching our younger players in the classes, as we do the semester, I've asked our coaches and myself included to like, think about those people who are part of this story, the grand story of what we're doing, that can illustrate this point of, say, brotherhood or sharpen the axe or whatever it is. And we have so many great stories. Yeah. That's good. And that also connects them to that long line, right? That I'm part of something bigger than myself. And these guys have done it. So whether it's in our own organization or in the grand story of history, like in Plutarch's Lives, with someone like Julius Caesar, we need to tell better stories, and we need to read better stories of people who dared greatly, but also didn't do it right, because we all know the flaws that many of these great figures of history had. But we can learn, well, what happened? Why'd they mess us up? Where'd they miss it?
So you talk about stories, and we've talked about reading and learning and things like that. Coach, what's your favorite book that you've read?
Right now, we know that changes over time, right?
To narrow one down, if I had to narrow one down in terms of the impact it's had on me in my everyday life, in both personally and professionally, it's the book by Friedman, Failure of Nerve. A Failure of Nerve. Leadership. The subtitle is Leadership in the Age of the Quick Fix. I recommend that book to people in leadership positions all the time. It's a very language heavy. It can go right over your head. So
you're saying that I'm not going to be able to get it?
No. What I'm saying is that as a person listening,
I'll have to read it multiple times.
Yes, I said don't be discouraged, because I was discouraged as well. It's the type of book you have to go back to, and it's not a book that you have to read in the order of the chapters that it talks about, because he just talks about the principles that I've kind of mentioned, some of them here, of leadership, and this it's basically leadership through self-differentiation. Murray Bowen was a family systems therapist, where a lot of the ideas come from, family systems theory, that then others like Friedman took and adapted into organizations at the highest level, from U.S. military on down.
Wow.
To our home, to our families. Like, it's pretty impactful, but it's deep. It's like, prepare yourself. But I'll tell you what, I've gone back to that hundreds of times now. And I believe he was onto something about the systems thinking that you can also apply to leadership as well. So that's probably the one, if I had to really narrow one down, that had the most impact.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. And I love the thought of just going back to us real quick on stories, and that just how, besides your own experience, the best way to learn is through stories. And so we can become storytellers. But I think part of that too is those kids want their story to be remembered and their story to be told. And so it kind of motivates them. Like, what's your story going to be at the end of your career here at Rigby or wherever?
Like that a lot.
That's it. I mean, to finish up here, I think that's a great place to finish. I try and highlight at the end, if we're fortunate to make it along the way, right? And there's a certain time that I kind of try and choose that message, but it's like, be a legend. Yeah. It's your turn. So this year I literally put on a few of the clips and highlights. And luckily, the positive of social media is like I have that historical record that I would have never had before.
Yeah.
I have that great video that Matt did with Tiger jumping over at Meridian in 2021 in the triple overtime game to win the game at the goal line to win it. And it's in slow motion. And it's like those images, and I used that, and I used a few others. I can't remember what they were. Taylor Freeman, what he accomplished, breaking his arm, snapped his arm 2 weeks prior. 2 weeks later, he's got a rod in his arm, playing in the state championship, catches a touchdown pass. Like
Verdrero's pick six.
Yeah, all these little things that happen, we want to tell that story. And it's like, hey, it's time for now, like the torch has been passed. You've gone through that process. Go be a legend yourself.
When you say that, you think of like the old high school dudes, right? That talk to their kids. And
Uncle Rico?
Yes. So you can, exactly. So you can be the Uncle Rico and tell the story that no one really gives a shit about. And your kids are like...
Or that you've made up halfway through the years.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you can have the story that you can tell, but then also tells itself by other people.
That's correct.
Year after year after year.
That's it.
I mean...
Like, hey, and I try and tell our seniors in this whole kind of teaching phase, and as we get into the season, it's like, well, what story are they going to say about you guys? What story are they going to say about this team, your class? Is it a story worth telling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's what being a legend is. It's like, being a legend doesn't mean you win, because there's a lot of legends that died in history,
right?
And the Spartans are one of them, right?
Yeah.
They didn't make it out against the Persians.
It's the Sandlot quote, with Babe Ruth. He probably never said it, but he comes in his dream and he says, legends never die. Legends are remembered forever, whatever it is.
Yeah, or the Gladiator, right? What you do echoes in eternity.
Yeah.
It's like I said, why does it touch us?
Yeah.
Because there's something there that needs to be tapped into. And I feel like, especially today, because of I can watch the experience, I can play video games of the experience, or I can do it. I can be a man of action. And so we are missing. I think we do need to encourage our young people these days more than ever to go do it.
And be remembered.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not just watch it happen, because you're watching everything happen around you.
And you're not remembered by focusing on yourself. You're remembered by truly trying to help other people.
That's right.
And
that's why
serving others.
That's what daring greatly is.
I love that. And we've talked about this, that sometimes success and real estate and things like that. First of all, a lot of people just think that it is money, but it's, what the impact you make on others. But what's interesting is I feel like with social media, you can replay a highlight over and over and over of one cool thing that happened, that your sports center, right? That you talked about. But I mean, a snapshot in real estate, somebody looks like they're the perception, and they can put it on social media, and that is almost as good as actually being successful as a while ago, of being the guy who truly is successful. Because this person can act like it and still get as many clicks or likes or shares.
That's right.
And I always feel like that's kind of a weird, scary thing that we can fall into.
Well, I mean, just with the artificial intelligence, playing games with the what are those VR goggles?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I'm afraid like one day we're not going to be playing football out in the field anymore, because like no one's going to want to do it for real.
Yeah.
It's too hard.
It's true. It's too hard. I know, right?
True.
Yeah.
So anyways, but I agree. I think that's really important that we encourage our young people to go out there and be a legend.
Well, thank you so
awesome.
much for coming on, and we'll definitely make it happen again. And so anyway,
appreciate
whenever you guys
taking
want me back, I love to talk about this stuff. I could do this all day.
We do too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.